The air is colder than the winter that defined an era, and the markets are hung with shadows. Quiet fortunes move like submarines under black water, unseen yet full of consequence. In this story, wealth never rings a bell when it enters the room. It slips through cables, travels in coded orders, rides with the night shift, and smiles without leaving fingerprints. In this story, power is counted not in titles, but in accounts only a handful of people can find, let alone touch. The conflict is simple, or at least it pretends to be. Two worlds face each other across an iron horizon. Each side needs steel, fuel, circuitry, grain, and influence. Each side needs friends. Each side needs secrecy. And someone, somewhere, has to make the payments no one can afford to acknowledge. Alliances need subsidies. Patrons need deniability. Strategy needs liquidity. Public money is audited. Quiet money is trusted. And trust in this age is worth more than gold if it can be moved faster than a rumor. Listen, the first rule is that money hates borders. It leaks through controls, it evaporates from print to signal, and it condenses again on the far side as opportunity. The second rule is that the most valuable commodity is plausible deniability. The third rule is that to build a fortune in the cold, you must learn to make the heat elsewhere. It begins with a corridor in a nameless building where the lights hum and the door never fully closes. A voice says, "Keep the shipment off the books." A second voice answers, "There is only one way to do that." The method is older than the flags on the map, but reborn by the pressure of the age. Create a structure so ordinary that it looks invisible, and then make it global. A chain of shell companies, one in a coastal jurisdiction, one in a northern finance hub, one tucked into a city of glass towers and fog. On paper, they trade machinery parts, spare components, and agricultural inputs. In reality, they move leverage. Credit lines are extended against collateral that never moves. Invoices are split in halves and thirds. Profits travel one direction, liabilities another. The balance sheet appears thin in every place, but together the web is vast. Who owns it? No one, and everyone, and anyone who knows which name to say to which clerk on a Thursday after hours. Control is a set of instructions memorized, then burned. The fortunes begin as fees, small at first, a percentage for clearing a shipment that cannot be traced to the backers who need it, a percentage for arranging insurance for cargo that cannot exist, a percentage for the risk someone else is delighted to outsource. These percentages compound. They compound on routing payments through markets that do not sleep. They compound on holding deposits in currencies that can be exchanged in quiet corners outside the glare of central banks. They compound when a crisis strikes and speed becomes priceless. Speed in this era is the oxygen of strategy. The official channels are orderly and slow. The unofficial channels are ragged and fast. And somewhere out there, a group of financiers, lawyers, and logistic minds realize the same truth. If they can build off-ramps from the official economy into the shadow lanes of offshore accounts and back, they can earn not just wealth, but leverage over the powerful. They do not need to publish their names. They do not need a crest. They need only a few things: access to the network of unasked questions, a feeling for the currents of panic and appetite, and an iron stomach.
So, the paper is engineered like a bridge, a contract written in one language, governed by the law of a place that remains nameless in public. An escrow that releases when conditions cannot be proven by outsiders, only by the shared silence of insiders. A letter of credit issued by a bank that prides itself on catering to clients who never smile in photographs. The intermediary's fee is both the bridge toll and the warranty. The outside world talks about ideology. Inside, the secret billionaires talk about spreads and clearance times. The outside world sees lines on maps. Inside, the secret billionaires see corridors of liquidity, the spots where 1 million can become 100 million if timed to meet a shortage, and where 100 million can become 1 billion if paired with a crisis. Crises are their tide charts. Grain shortage, fuel shortage, scarcity of microcomponents, shortage of convertible foreign exchange. Each pinch point is an invitation to solve a problem discreetly and be paid handsomely for the discretion. They are not alone. There are insurers who will insure the uninsurable for a price so high it suggests the insurance was never meant to be claimed. There are brokers who can find a machine part stamped in the right factory with the right date without ever entering the factory. There are lawyers who specialize in writing agreements whose power lies in how easily they can be disavowed. There are accountants who treat numbers like chess pieces, moving them in sequences that look innocent to anyone who is not following the game. Arm's length becomes a lifestyle. A conference room is rented under a project name that will never become public. The agenda is blank. The flight manifests show nothing unusual. And yet, by nightfall, credits are rebooked. A tranche of currency is swapped in a market no tourist has ever heard of, and a set of ships is instructed to idle offshore until a code word appears on a shortwave channel. Everything is ordinary except for the arrangement of the ordinary into an extraordinary design. At scale, the design becomes a private weather system. When the secret billionaires exhale, interest rates in some corner of the unreported market drift lower. When they inhale, a price spikes elsewhere. They do not aim to control empires. They aim to skim the surface tension where states and markets meet. But in skimming, they learn something shocking. The surface tension is stronger than the water beneath. The sheen on the ocean, the thin layer where sunlight meets salt, can be pushed into shapes that redirect entire currents below. An ally on one continent faces insolvency. Public budgets cannot show support without political cost. Quietly, the arrangers create a swap: fuel for gumption, credit for alignment. They orchestrate a sequence, export a commodity at a discount through an intermediary, reverse the discount with a service contract, funnel the difference into a stabilization fund that technically does not belong to anyone at all, yet pays salaries on time. The ally survives another season. The arrangers take their cut. They do not issue a press release. Elsewhere, a factory that cannot import crucial components suddenly can, because the components have been relabeled, and the invoice has been paid not by the factory, but by a holding company that has no employees and yet wields a seal that opens doors. Production resumes. The line workers never learn the name of the firm that saved their paychecks. The firm prefers it that way.
So what remains of them now? A signature bearing no name, still valid in a jurisdiction chosen for its discretion. A corridor of banks that specialized in treating money like water, moving it downhill no matter the terrain. A generation of technicians who learned to price the unpriceable and insure the uninsurable. And a broader lesson that echoes long after the frost has melted. When states dream of permanence, they turn to markets for agility. When markets dream of invisibility, they turn to states for legitimacy. Between them flows the current where fortunes are born without a birth certificate. Listen. The clock that once ticked louder than the wind is quiet. The ledgers, though, still whisper.
They speak of the old winter, when ideologies clashed and banknotes bridged the silence. They speak of how fear sharpens ingenuity, how scarcity becomes a business model, how necessity mothers networks that outlive their crises. They remind us that power loves the shade, that wealth prefers the soundproofing of a sealed door, and that the distance between necessity and exploitation can be measured in basis points if one is not careful. Here is the resolution you may not want but cannot ignore. The story ends where most stories of money end, with a mirror. Look into it and ask, if secrecy built resilience, how much transparency can we afford without breaking the machine? If transparency is the ideal, how much secrecy must we tolerate to keep the lights on when the world grows cold again? The people who answered those questions before did so with balance sheets. They paid themselves in margins and invisibility. They became wealthy not because they invented greed, but because they understood the exchange rate between risk and silence during an age that demanded both. What we inherit from that time is more than capital. It is an architecture, offshore and onshore, shadow and daylight, official and plausible, emergency and routine. It is a map whose legend is written in euphemisms, facilitation, contingency, accommodation. The map can be abused. It can also be the reason hospitals receive supplies when headlines suggest they should not. The difference lies in who holds the pen and who oversees the hand that moves it. In the end, think of a ship in winter waters, its hull black against darker waves, its name changed yesterday, its papers stamped in a city you cannot point to on a globe. Inside, a light flickers over a desk. A clerk reviews a document that confirms cargo received, payment captured, obligations met. No anthem plays, no flag is saluted, yet somewhere a factory runs, a convoy rolls, a border holds, a family eats. Somewhere else, a rival network prepares a counter-move, confident that a path through the ice always exists for those who can pay. This was the calculus of that age. Wealth as lubricant, secrecy as armor, markets as terrain. The secret billionaires did not ask for gratitude, they asked for a fee. And when the winter finally ended, they did what money always does. They adapted. They folded their sails and built office towers. They archived their codes and called them best practices. They shook hands with the daylight and kept one drawer locked. Remember this as the lights fade and the hum returns. In the cold, power learned to move without making sound. In the thaw, power kept the habit. If you listen carefully, beneath the noise of open exchanges and public filings, you can still hear the quiet current. You can still hear the business of making the improbable possible at a price only a few are allowed to name. And if you follow that current long enough, you arrive at the final truth of the age. The greatest fortunes are not those announced, but those arranged. Close the ledger. The ink is dry, but the story lingers, like breath in winter, visible for a moment, then gone. The cold taught the world that silence has value, and that value, when compounded, can buy almost anything. Almost. What it cannot buy is the absolution of memory. That belongs to history. And history remembers even those who insisted on leaving no trace, because absence, too, leaves a mark. The ticking returns, softer now, like a heartbeat. It asks one question as the screen darkens, a question born in frost and carried into the present. When the next winter comes, who will own the silence?